It's not about agreeing to everything. It's about gathering more information. And that's the skill that is really fun to work with executives because the light bulb goes on and they realize, just like on an improv stage, everything you need on stage in a show exists within your partner.
HR doesn't always happen in neat, well-planned moments. Sometimes it's messy, unpredictable, and completely unscripted. And while employees are burnt out from the pace, managers are being asked to lead through the stress without a playbook, which raises the question, how do you respond in the moment when there is no script? Welcome to this special live recording of Honest HR, where we turn real issues facing today's HR departments into honest conversations with actionable insights. I'm your host, Monique Akanbi. Let's get honest. In improv, there's one rule that changes everything. A theatrical exercise known as yes and. And HR is usually more like, it depends. So what if borrowing a few techniques from the improv stage could actually make us better decision makers, stronger communicators, and more confident under pressure? Today, we're joined by my new friend, Dave Collins, founder and CEO of Oak and Reeds, who has spent over 20 years combining the unexpected worlds of change management consulting and improvisational comedy. Welcome to Honest HR, Dave.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Well, Dave, you've built your career on what seems like an unlikely combination: change management consulting and improv comedy. What led you to discover these two worlds actually complement each other perfectly?
So I got my start as a change management consultant, and we were doing workplace strategy change management, which was basically designing new offices and then helping people move into them. So federal agencies, tech companies, and it boiled down a lot to, we're going to take away your private offices, put you in an open plan, and give you lots more places to be collaborative and meet. And people didn't always love that. So what I learned in facilitating those conversations, those workshops, those meetings is what I was doing was helping guide people through uncertainty. And it was the same thing I was doing on stage because I've been doing improv since high school and training people to get up on stage and deal with uncertainty in the moment with a clear set of tools. Because that's something we can talk about today is improv isn't just completely making it all up. You have a certain set of tools you kind of go back to again and again that help you deal with, oh my goodness, I don't know what's going to happen next. I can't plan it.
Right. So that's interesting. I can definitely see change, right? And dealing with change. And I mean, I don't know, for me, the comedy, I always say you have to laugh and to stop from crying, right? So kind of think about it that way. So how do you reframe improv from that unpreparedness to more of a strategic tool for professional decision making?
So in improv, I think there's a misnomer. I'm curious, who here in the audience has done improv before? Yeah, I see a couple hands. Who here has seen an improv show? Okay, a good amount of people. Awesome. So the thing about improv is it looks like it's completely chaotic. And really those three tools that I'm talking about are everyone on stage is trained to notice everything. That's really the yes part in yes-anding. Yes is really just, I heard what you're saying, and I picked up on all the little fine details. Improvisers are incredible listeners. They notice the tiniest little facial expression, a little pause, a little moment of uncertainty, whatever that is, they pick up on that. And then the and is really just about, let's do more of that. Let's go further with whatever that thought is. So as a leader, what I train people in my workshops is if you train yourself to pause and notice everything that your people are doing, the next step becomes really obvious. Because instead of trying to think through steps 7, 8, 9, 10 in your head, you're just worried about what's in front of you. And the next step will reveal itself. That's really the and. But as leaders, we often get tied up with, I need to come up with 10 different backup plans and 10 different plans. that almost never have the opportunity to be executed because the reality in front of you shifts before it's even relevant.
Yeah, when I practiced HR, for me, it was more of I plant my day and then my day plant me, right? So if you think about it, definitely improvisation. And I love that you called out that those that do improv are very good listeners, which is a very good skill to have, especially in the workplace, and to be curious, right? So the and is more of the curious, like being able to dig deeper. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I think one of the pushback I get a lot when I introduce improv as a leadership tool is, well, I can't just say yes to everything. You're telling me we got to use this concept of yes and, I'm not Amy Poehler. I'm not Stephen Colbert. I'm not on stage saying yes to everything and going with the flow. And it's not about agreeing to everything. It's about gathering more information. And that's the skill that is really fun to work with executives, because the light bulb goes on and they realize, just like on an improv stage, everything you need on stage in a show exists within your partner. So if you have that mindset, you don't have to do that much work on stage. Everything you need is coming from your partner as long as you pay attention.
Yeah. And you're referencing stage, but then also what I'm just imagining too, because even in the workplace, we're pretty much on stage, right? We don't realize who's watching us, right? And so I can definitely see that parallel as well. So with so many employees experiencing change fatigue, how does rethinking our relationship with failure help HR professionals build confidence in those high pressure situations?
Yeah, it's a great question. And this is where my background in change, where I started to smash these two disciplines together. And you can look at any study, right? Gartner, Deloitte, anyone looking at change fatigue, right? You're going to find that most leaders, and especially people managers in the middle sections, are struggling with fatigue and are struggling with the ability to lead teams and individuals through constant change. Because it's not the 90s. There's not one change and then we have 2 quarters off where it's business as usual. It's, as one of my clients called it, it's permanent whitewater, right? We are always in the middle of the rapids. And so I think it's really important to reframe change fatigue not as a strategic problem, like we need more change consultants, we need more Gantt charts, we need more schedules. It's an emotional intelligence problem. It's arming individuals with the capacity to understand how their brains and bodies react under uncertainty and to know what to ask for support in those situations.
Yeah. So how do you balance then change with because there's change for the sake of changing, which I think causes a lot of change fatigue. But then there's also change that is necessary, especially in the world we live in today, right? My rule is if something changes, I'll give it 24 minutes to settle, because the likelihood of it changing again within those 24 hours is pretty high.
Yeah.
So in terms of balancing kind of like that change, that fatigue around it, how do you be able to decipher and be able to use kind of like the emotional intelligence that you talked about to really be able to kind of manage that?
So the example I always give is what mostly change fatigue usually is, if you peel away the surface, is it's the pressure to be good at something too early. It's the pressure that as a leader, I have to be fully on board and be an expert because everyone's looking to me to be perfect in something that I am a beginner at. And something that improvisation teaches everyone when you get up on stage, whether you are a 30-year veteran or you're learning for the first time, it's to lower the perceived cost of failure, to make making mistakes lower cost. And I want to teach a tool right now for that. So if you wouldn't mind, do you want to stand up again? I'm going to make you stand up maybe 2 or 3 more times. This is one of my favorite tools. I teach it at the beginning.
Improv, so you want
This is improv. This is improv. I teach this at the beginning. It's something called the failure bow. So in a workshop, anytime you make a mistake, instead of getting nervous or upset or frustrated or wanting to walk out and like check your phone, I encourage everyone to celebrate mistakes in a workshop. And to do that, anytime you make a mistake, I challenge everyone to put their arms out as big as they can, scream out, "I failed," and then take a big, ridiculous-looking bow, And then give yourself a little round of applause.
Okay.
And we can all do this together so we all feel weird and awkward for the
Yes.
very first time. Right? So we'll do it on stage.
Okay.
Do you want to take a failure bow with us?
Yes.
Great.
Okay.
So let's do it on the count of 3. Ready? Arms out. I failed. Big bow. 1, 2, 3.
I failed.
Yes, big, ridiculous-looking bow. Give yourself a round of applause. Amazing. Okay, we can grab a seat. Sorry, we're getting our steps in today.
Yes.
So the point is learning by doing, learning through trial and error, fail fast, whatever catchphrase you want to use. Improvisers know that mistakes are gifts. Mistakes are how we learn. Mistakes are really just practice. Practice is just a series of controlled mistakes. And if you can get your mind there, change doesn't feel so scary because you know I'm going to have to make some public mistakes as I'm learning something.
Yeah.
And I don't have to fear what that will change in others' perceptions of me.
Your organization has a window right now to lead I&D with confidence, not catch up later. SHRM Blueprint for I&D, part of All Things Work 2026, gives HR leaders the legal clarity and performance-based strategies to do exactly that. Lock in early bird pricing before August 28th at shrm.org/blueprint26-earlybird. That's shrm.org/blueprint26-earlybird.
So can you walk us through maybe a specific scenario where an HR leader might use failure reframing during a difficult employee conversation or an organizational change initiative?
Okay, so round of applause. Who loves giving constructive feedback? Right?
Just a couple.
Yeah, just a couple. You're my people. So I teach feedback a lot.
Okay.
And so I think constructive, challenging feedback conversations are one of those really important examples that kind of speaks to what you're talking about, where I'll coach managers on how to give feedback all the time. And usually there's all these stories in a manager's head about, oh my gosh, my direct is just gonna freak out when I give them this feedback. They're gonna melt down, they're gonna get upset, all of these catastrophizing stories. And what I coach them to do is, plan your talking points, know what you're gonna say, and start giving the feedback and know that whatever reaction you're gonna get is probably not something you anticipated. So it's training people to know that preparation is still really important, but know that once you hit the ground running, you should be prepared for anything. And don't stick to a rehearsed line when the reality of the conversation has completely changed. That's where the difference between preparing to read a script is less helpful than preparing and expecting the unexpected. Expecting I'm going to have to improvise, but again, just look at the person, read the room, listen to what they're saying. You'll know what to do next. You have to trust yourself there.
Yeah. So having that emotional intelligence.
Bingo. Yeah.
So we've referenced the yes and principle quite a bit, which is central to improv. How does this translate to HR situations where you genuinely disagree with an idea or need to deliver that difficult feedback you were talking about?
Yeah. So I think one of the important things to teach with yes and is yes and doesn't have to come out of your mouth as yes and here's what I think next, right? It doesn't have to be robotic like that. There's a lot of ways to yes and in a way that's more natural and still gets at that idea of I want to validate what you're saying and go further with the conversation. One of the lines you can use is instead of saying yes, just say, tell me more about that. And all you're doing is inviting them to keep talking. It's giving you more opportunity to listen. It's giving you more information about what they're saying. And the and can be just saying, I hear what you're saying. I'm going to reflect back all this stuff. And I'm going to give you some extra context that explains why maybe what you want can't be done, but it's connected to what you just said. Instead of just saying, yep, I heard you, but here's 10 reasons no. So it's a slightly different way to have those hard conversations where you're validating and you're going deeper with what their needs are and still holding the line.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. So, what's the difference between being spontaneous and being unprepared?
Yeah.
And where do you see leaders misuse these ideas? So, for example, mistaking flexibility for lack of structure or discipline.
Yeah, I think you always have to have structure, right? It's a both and situation. Like there's going to be parts of your business that are very structured, very sequential for a reason, right? I am not saying everything has to be we are going to kind of go with the flow in the moment. Compliance issues, onboarding, legal challenges, all these things are like there's a process, follow that process. The quote I always like is from a great improv teacher named Keith Johnstone. And he talks about the difference between saying yes and no. Those who say yes are rewarded by the adventures they have, and those who say no are rewarded by the safety they attain. And so look at a situation. What do I need here? What does the team, what does the organization need? Do we need adventure? Do we need innovation? Do we need creativity, energy, surprise? Or do we need safety? And in a lot of cases, we do need safety, right? Work is a place for things to be as expected as possible sometimes. But actually evaluate the situation and then choose an approach. Don't just go with instinct, because oftentimes we'll just go with the no out of a reaction and an instinct.
Well, it's good to think of no as safety versus rejection, right? Because oftentimes no is associated with rejection. So I love looking at no as safety. So, for the HR professionals in the audience who want to start implementing these techniques immediately, what's the first thing they should try by tomorrow morning?
Well, one of the simplest things they can do is take what I call the pause. You're in a conversation, maybe it's heated, maybe it's confusing, maybe it's not going in a direction you want. Pausing for 2 seconds before you share your thoughts does wonders for the quality of your conversation. It gives you the opportunity to listen for more. So, what did I actually hear them say? Did they finish talking? Is there an opportunity for me to say, tell me more about X or Y? Or can you explain that in a little more detail? It's the improviser's muscle of, I need as much information as possible. Everything that I need to know is in my partner, is in the person I'm talking with. And then it gives you an opportunity to collect your thoughts. What's going to be the and? And specifically, you get to determine what direction the conversation goes in. So how do you want to steer it? So take that pause, gather the thoughts, see if you need more info, and then move forward rather than just jumping to what's my next plan? What's my next thing to say?
Yeah, and I can see the correlation between wanting to have the answers, wanting to know being the go to, and the challenge of like pausing, right? Because we want to be able to respond, right?
We want to be seen as experts, right? I think that's a really, back to that earlier thought around change and emotional intelligence. We want to be the experts. We want to have the answers. We want to be respected. Those are all really important things for HR and people leaders to have. But our secret superpower is our empathy and our emotional intelligence. And if you don't give yourself a chance for your brain to let that superpower click into a conversation, you can easily go into solutions mode, which on stage in improv, we call steamrolling, which is where your scene partner just directs the conversation. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. I'm going to give no space for my scene partner to add anything or change the ideas of the scene. I'm just going to dominate. And it's no fun for people on stage, and it's no fun for the audience too, because that back and forth is what makes things interesting and rich.
Got it. So, how can organizations measure the impact of incorporating improvisational techniques into their HR strategies?
This is hard. I think as a training consultant and as someone who is often training people on what are traditionally seen as soft skills, right? The ability to listen, the ability to communicate, like it's hard to measure how good of a listener someone is or how comfortable they are being uncertain. The direction I think to go in is to try to measure psychological safety in your organization. There are a lot of tools for that. You can pick your poison with how you want to measure psychological safety. But that is an area where when you implement this type of thinking and this type of approach, and you encourage your leaders to behave in a yes and mindset, it spikes psychological safety scores. People feel comfortable learning in public, making good-natured mistakes in service of getting better at something. Like, for example, AI, right? People trying projects, maybe they don't work, maybe they write an agent and it sends a weird message to a customer and they, are upset about it, but they're trying to implement a new tool. If you slap their wrist and say, you made a mistake, you embarrassed the company, it's not a way to build safety in experimentation. Right? So creating sandboxes for people to make mistakes. And so, I think psychological safety, there's a lot of great, Google has done a ton of great research on their people looking at how psychological safety is tied to team outcomes, is tied to product outcomes, is tied to leadership and management outcomes. Google's Project Oxygen is a great case study if you want to look at it. They published all their data. They looked at what makes all of their thousands of people managers effective or not effective. Psychological safety is right there at the top. And these are all ways to practice psychological safety rather than just putting it in your values and putting it on a conference room wall and saying, like, this is a psychologically safe place to work.
The clock is ticking. Early bird pricing on the SHRM Certified Professional and SHRM Senior Certified Professional certification ends August 31st. Register now and use promo code SUMMER26 to save an additional 25%. This is your moment to stand out, prove your expertise, and take the next big step in HR. Don't wait until it's too late. Head to shrm.org/certification and lock in your savings today.
So I go into my workplace after attending talent and I say to my leaders, we need to do more improvisation, right? So in its simplest terms, how would you define or explain incorporating those improvisational techniques into day-to-day interactions?
Yeah, I think, well, first is there are so many opportunities to train executives and leaders, right? So you're going back and you're thinking about what's our next offsite? What's our next training program? What's our next opportunity to take a little time for development? If you hear the words change fatigue, if you hear the words psychological safety needs improvement, if you hear the words innovation, we need to be more innovative, if you hear the words like we're struggling with AI implementation, there's an opportunity to say, what are the actual skills and muscles metaphorically, that we need to practice? Improvisation and training people on that is step one for a lot of those like clear outcomes that I know all my clients are looking for right now, because we're grasping at straws as an HR world right now to figure out what's the solution here. And it's not like another video class, right? You have to get up and do this stuff. You can't just learn it by staring at a screen.
Got it. So for the HR professionals who might worry that encouraging spontaneity could lead to compliance issues, or maybe inconsistent messaging, how would you address those concerns?
I mean, it's a real concern, right? I think I'm going to be really specific with my language. I have not found many leaders who are saying we want less spontaneity, right? I think spontaneity generally is encouraged in the workplace. I think we don't want people who are like freewheeling and just completely freelancing and breaking rules that, again, back to that safety issue. I think first, it's a both and. There are situations that call for safety and there are situations that call for adventure. Be really clear with your teams why these situations have compliance rules and regulations, and those are not the opportunities for spontaneity. But here are the opportunities, and here is what we're looking for. So clarifying what is and what isn't. And I want to be really clear. An improvisational mindset doesn't mean you don't prepare. That's the big misnomer, I think. It doesn't mean you don't research, validate ideas, test things. It doesn't mean you don't have plans. It just means you're not stuck to the plan when the reality of the situation has changed, and saying the rehearsed thing actually is less helpful than reading the situation and adjusting.
So I love that you said that improvisation doesn't mean that you don't plan and you prepare. So how do you balance spontaneity with like last minute requests? Because HR never gets last minute requests, right?
Never, never. How do we balance it with last minute requests? I think one important thing to remember is that HR, which I'm you know this, you're getting requests at all hours of the day from all levels of the organization, and they all have varying levels of importance and urgency.
Everything's a priority. Everything is needed yesterday. So
Everything
yes.
is needed yesterday. Everything is important. Everything's a 10 out of 10. This is on fire. You get to determine how important and urgent it is for you and the HR function. Others don't get to determine that for you. So the tool, this is not a non-improv tool. This is an old school tool. This is the Eisenhower matrix, right? Rating things on how urgent are they to me and how important are they to me, and triaging. Because I think when we stay as HR leaders in order-taking mode, we lose the ability to be powerful strategic leaders because we're constantly in response mode. So the ability to say, like, I understand you think this is a 10 out of 10. I'm going to get to this on Friday because here's the things that are actually more important to me, and being able to explain it. That's a hard conversation sometimes, but it's protecting your boundaries in that sense. So again, that's not an improv answer.
Right.
It's a strategic answer.
Right. Well, which is needed in our world, right?
Yeah.
So what's the biggest mistake you see organizations make when trying to become more adaptable and flexible?
I think my favorite version of this is there's an all hands meeting and the CEO comes on stage and has a beautifully crafted slide and they say, all right, our plan for this quarter is we're going to be agile and we are going to be unpredictable and we are going to be innovative. Now here's my 30 PowerPoint slides explaining how we're going to do that. And I want you to sit there and listen to that. And people go like, what? Like, what do you even mean? All of this stuff takes practice, and it takes like dedicated time for people to be comfortable thinking on their feet, listening deeply, and building on the ideas of others. I teach that through workshops. You can teach that yourselves, right? Carving out time for people to have 30-minute groups of 3 where they brainstorm ideas with no set agenda other than we're going to walk out of here with 2 things we want to explore more deeply. Time and practice are the way you get here, not C-level strategic imperatives with no change in people's day-to-day habits. And usually what that means is you got to take stuff off people's plate. There needs to be time for unstructured idea generation and practice, whether it's, Google back in the day had the 20% rule, which they've kind of gotten away from right now. And it's hurt the organization. So non-outcome enforced practice is how you learn. Just like you learn an instrument or a language, you make a ton of mistakes and you gain expertise that way.
So we're living in a time where there's a lot of remote employees or hybrid employees. So how do you see improvisation incorporated with remote employees?
Yeah, it's a tough question. I think I have done just classic improv for the stage on Zoom, and it doesn't do it for me, right? It's not the same thing because as human beings, we are hardwired to enjoy in-person communication because we can pick up on so much more, right? I can pick up on your body language. Your tone, that little, like, when you look away and roll your eyes, like that is a flashing red light that tells me, okay, we're not on the same page here. That's all unconscious. Zoom or Teams or whatever you're using, it flattens all that information. And it also becomes energy intensive to listen more. Listening to someone talk for 5 minutes on Zoom takes a lot more energy than just listening to someone like over coffee, right? It's like a completely different experience.
Right.
So understanding that, acknowledging that, and realizing that, if you're spending 7 hours a day in a Zoom meeting, your emotional intelligence battery is going to be at like 0% by 11 a.m. And you're not going to have the desire to listen deeply, build on ideas, take all these like concepts we're talking about and put them into play because you're tired or you have no recharge time. So that's not a lot of solutions, right?
No, but it's helpful because it also reframed even my thinking. So I always say, even when we attend sessions or conversations, you don't always have to always have to walk away with direct answers. If it reframes your thinking or makes you think differently, then that's a solution in itself, right? To look at something very differently.
And something that I think can really help, and it's not the most exciting thing in the world, but it's intentional meeting design when you're using virtual tools. I'm a big proponent of getting people to do something at least every 7 minutes. And I like set a watch, right? So if I'm doing a workshop or if I'm in a meeting, if I'm not having everyone on the call do something every 7 minutes, I know I'm going to lose them. I'm going to lose them to their phones, to their email, whatever else is on that screen. I'm competing with literally the screen's in front of their face.
Everything else.
Everything is right there.
Right.
So as adults learning, we have to be practicing in the moment. So even if it's just like a team meeting, have a quick, okay, on a scale 1 to 5, how much do you agree with what I just said? Put it in the chat. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right? These are not big design overhauls. Or, I just presented a new idea. Let's go to breakouts, talk with a partner for 4 minutes, and come back, and then put your top 2 ideas into the chat. Just different moments of interaction that require a little bit more planning, but not that much more, to get people doing things in the meeting rather than just sitting and listening, because that's where it's exhausting.
Thank you so much, Dave, for joining us for this episode of Honest HR. And thank you to our live audience. Give yourselves a round of applause. That's going to do it for this episode of Honest HR. We'll catch you next time. Hello, friends. We hope this week's episode gave you the candid tips and insights you need to keep growing and thriving in your career. Honest HR is part of HR Daily, the content series from SHRM that delivers a daily newsletter directly to your inbox, filled with all the latest HR news and research. Sign up at shrm.org/HRdaily. Plus, follow SHRM on social media for even more clips and stories. Like, share, and add to the comments. Because real change starts with real talk.
SHRM. This podcast is approved for 0.5 professional development credits, also known as PDCs, toward SHRM CP and SHRM SCP recertification. Enter the following PDC activity ID in your SHRM activity portal to log your credit. 27-KM9RW. Again, the PDC code is 27-KM9RW. This code expires on September 1st, 2027.